August 25, 1944, Cherbourg Harbor, Normandy, France. The air was thick with the mix of salt, diesel, and urgency. Sergeant William Henderson wiped the grease from his hands and stared in disbelief at the endless line of trucks stretching toward the horizon. Only months earlier, the British had dismissed these machines as failures, underpowered, clumsy, and unfit for modern war. Yet now, 6,000 of them stood ready, forming the backbone of General Patton's Lifeline across 400 miles of shattered French countryside. Stamped on each hood were the letters GMC General Motors Corporation, but to the mostly African-American drivers climbing into the cabs, exhausted before their engines even started, those letters meant something deeper: survival, endurance, and a fragile link between victory and defeat. None of them knew that morning that this humble 2.5-ton truck, the GMC CCKW, nicknamed Jimmy or Deuce and a half, would become one of the most valuable weapons of the entire war. More vital than tanks or aircraft, it would carry an army across a continent. Its story, however, had begun years earlier, not on a battlefield, but in the quiet design rooms of General Motors in 1939. There, American engineers were tasked with a challenge: to create a truck that could haul 2.5 tons of supplies over any terrain the world could throw at it. What they would build would not just carry steel and fuel, it would carry the weight of history itself. In 1939, the U.S. Army Ordnance Corps requested a new all-terrain, -1 wheel-drive vehicle that could withstand the rigors of global warfare. Engineers at GMC's Pontiac, Michigan plant began with a commercial design, then toughened it: a reinforced ladder frame, dual rear axles, and all-wheel drive. The prototype, the ACKW X353, ran on a modest 77 horsepower inline-6 engine, small by later standards, but durable and dependable. France was the first to take notice, ordering 1,000 units. Yet history intervened. Before delivery, the German blitzkrieg swept across Europe, toppling France in weeks. The trucks meant for the French army were seized and used by the Wehrmacht. On the Eastern Front, even, German soldiers grudgingly admired their reliability in brutal conditions. The British, too, tested the American design. Their verdict: too slow, too heavy, too crude for Europe's narrow roads. They declared it unfit for war and sent most of their allotment east to the Soviet Union under the Lend-Lease program. But American engineers weren't chasing perfection. They understood something the British did not: quantity has a quality of its own. By 1941, the redesigned model, the CCKW, was ready. The name itself was a code: C for 1941 design, C for conventional cab, K for all-wheel drive, and W for dual rear axles. With a 270 cubic inch engine producing 104 horsepower and improved torque, the truck was now stronger, faster, and more reliable than ever. Simple, rugged, and endlessly repairable, it was the kind of machine that could win a long, grinding war. By 1942, GMC's factories in Michigan and Missouri were working around the clock, rolling out one CCKW every 7 minutes. Its design was brilliant in its simplicity: riveted frame, leaf spring suspension, and a cab that could be repaired with a wrench and wire. Early models had steel roofs, but by 1943, open canvas tops replaced them, saving precious metal and weight. 2 versions rolled off the lines: the short 352 for artillery and towing, and the longer 353 for cargo and fuel. Together, they became the unheralded heroes of mobility. By the time of D-Day in June 1944, thousands of these trucks were ready. As Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, the Jimmy followed, hauling fuel, food, and ammunition over muddy, cratered roads. But as the Allies broke out of the beachhead, a crisis loomed. Patton's Third Army was advancing faster than anyone expected: 80 miles a day and burning through gasoline at an impossible rate. Every Sherman tank needed 150 gallons per 100 miles. Yet railroads were bombed, bridges gone, and ports overwhelmed. The Allies were winning battles but risked losing the campaign to logistics. "We're running out of gas, not courage," Patton growled. The solution would have to be as bold as the offensive itself. On August 21, 1944, American logisticians conceived an audacious plan: the Red Ball Express, a non-stop convoy system that would feed the front directly from the ports of Normandy. The wheels of history were about to turn red. The name came from railroad slang. Red Ball marked cargo that had absolute priority. In France, soldiers painted bright red circles on trucks and road signs to signal the new supply arteries. To one-way routes stretched nearly 400 miles, one for loaded trucks heading east, another for empties heading west. Every intersection was guarded by MPs. Civilian traffic was banned. The biggest challenge wasn't the trucks, it was drivers. The U.S. Army of 1944 was still segregated. African American soldiers, long relegated to service roles, suddenly found themselves thrust into one of the most dangerous and vital jobs of the war. Of the 23,000 men who ran the express, 3/4 were black, many were barely out of their teens, sons of sharecroppers, students, or factory workers who'd never seen France before. On August 25, 1944, as Paris celebrated its liberation, the first Red Ball convoys roared out of Cherbourg, their mission to keep the Third Army moving no matter the cost. Each convoy was a rolling lifeline, jeeps in front and rear, trucks spaced 60 yards apart, running day and night. Officially, they were limited to 25 miles per hour. But in truth, many tore through the night at 50. Engines screaming, drivers gulping coffee and Benzedrine to stay awake. In blackout conditions, headlights were forbidden. The drivers followed the dim glow of the truck ahead, praying it wouldn't swerve off a bridge or into a crater. Rain, exhaustion, and Luftwaffe strafing made every mile a gamble. Yet the convoys rolled on unstoppable, defiant, and heroic. By the end of the first week, the Red Ball Express was delivering over 12,000 tons of supplies a day. Mechanics worked by lantern light, scavenging spare parts and cannibalizing wrecks to keep the jimmies alive. Tires blew out, engines overheated, brakes failed on mountain passes. Yet, somehow, the convoys never stopped. The simplicity of the CCKW became its greatest strength. A wrench, some wire, and a little ingenuity could bring one back from the dead. Soldiers joked, she runs on courage as much as gasoline. But for the drivers especially, the African American men who made up its backbone, the journey was more than mechanical. They faced open racism from their own army, denied access to white mess halls, harassed by MPs, and warned not to fraternize. They endured indignity even as they sustained the entire Allied advance. Private James Ruckert remembered dodging air raids while half asleep. Corporal Washington Rector spoke of how prejudice faded when white combat soldiers realized who kept them alive. When the gas and ammo showed up, color didn't matter anymore, he said. For 82 grueling days, the Red Ball Express thundered east, crossing shattered bridges and cratered roads, carrying the pulse of an army. Every drop of fuel, every bullet, every loaf of bread that reached the front came on the back of a GMC. By September, the Red Ball route stretched deep into central France. But the longer the road, the greater the strain. Trucks broke faster than they could be repaired. Fatigue killed as many as enemy bombs. Yet, despite it all, the mission succeeded. By November 1944, with Antwerp's port reopened and pipelines laid across France, the Red Ball Express officially stood down. In just 82 days, it had delivered over 412,000 tons of supplies, an achievement unmatched in military history. But when Hitler launched his final counteroffensive, the Battle of the Bulge, the trucks and drivers returned under new names: the Little Red Ball and the White Ball Express. In freezing snow and enemy fire, they once again kept the front alive. When the war ended, the GMC CCKW rolled into legend. More than 500,000 were built, more than the entire German wartime truck output. They hauled refugees, rebuilt Europe, and served again in Korea. General Patton summed it up best: the 2.5-ton truck is our most valuable weapon. He wasn't wrong. The Jimmy had proven that wars are not only won by tanks or planes but by wheels, grit, and the courage of men who refused to stop rolling. From the muddy roads of France to the snows of the Ardennes, the hum of its engine became the sound of victory itself.